Welcome Santa Clarita Valley, politicos, voters, residents, and people who should be registered to vote alike. We're here. I'm News Director Perry Smith. In the studio with me is congressional candidate Bryan Caforio, who's running for the 25th Congressional District seat, currently held by Congressman Steve Knight. And Bryan, this is your first foray into politics.
Yes, it is. And first off, great to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming in, yeah. Tell me a little bit about, I got your backstory. We were talking earlier in the week, a little bit about what inspired you to get into politics. And it's a fairly recent journey, but you started in December?
Yeah, I came into this race in December. It really goes back to, my beginning. I grew up in Southern California. Both my parents were public school teachers. And I grew up in that middle-class family and got a lot of good opportunities to go to good schools, which gave me the opportunity to get to UCLA and then to Yale Law School to work for a federal judge. And I came back over the last few years, and I've been handling a lot of different types of cases, but particularly focused on dealing with, mortgage-backed securities cases and just seeing what was happening after the financial collapse, seeing how people were taken advantage of, and seeing far too many people who didn't have those same opportunities that I had to get ahead, and just getting frustrated with that dysfunction in Washington and wanting to do something about it.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Who are you representing in the mortgage-backed security cases? What type of litigation are we talking about there?
Sure, there are a lot of different types of cases. So one in particular, over the last few years, we represented the National Credit Union Administration Board, where they had come in and taken over a credit union that had failed, or multiple credit unions that had failed actually because of bad mortgage-backed securities that were issued. And you just kind of saw on the inside how these mortgages were issued, the problems that were in place there and wanting to prevent it from happening. But there were a lot of different types of cases. I dealt with one Ponzi scheme case where you had a lot of people in the financial industry who were really just taking advantage of people who didn't know better, who relied on these representations and lost a lot of money. And unfortunately, many of them were elderly. Many of them didn't have stuff to fall back on. And it was frustrating to see that happening. And I really just wanted to be part of the solution trying to fix it.
And so you see the solution as kind of a holistic, we need a holistic approach to this mortgage-backed security. The financial crises in 2008, there was a lot of factors that are going on here. It's not a simple issue by any means. So how do you go about starting to fix that?
Absolutely. I mean, it's much bigger than mortgage. It's much bigger than a Ponzi scheme. What I really think we have right now is just a dysfunctional system in Washington. You have a lot of career corporate politicians who are looking out for their biggest donors. They're looking out for the special interest instead of looking out for the people on Main Street, the people in our community. And what I want to see and what I want to be a part of is being in Washington and trying to stand up for our community against some of those special interests to reshape and refocus the priorities.
Okay, and so by some of the special interests, you're talking about the Goldman Sachs, the bigger mortgage financial companies?
Sure, absolutely. That, and also dirty energy companies, and just, really focusing, instead of having, a tax break when somebody a corporate CEO flies their private plane to a golf retreat in Jackson, Wyoming, let's focus on investing that money in our communities. Let's fix the crumbling roads. Let's fix the bridges, our water supply. Let's invest in education. Since 2011, at the federal level, our education spending has been cut by 20%. We've cut our spending on our children's future by 20%. That's crazy. We need to be investing in our children. And as the son of two public school teachers, this is something that's very close to my heart and something I want to focus on.
Well, one of the things that people have pointed at as part of the problem with education is, tenures and unions and issues that are very difficult traditionally to approach. And, also along that same vein, just more money, obviously, you've I'm sure looked at the information. More money isn't always a solution. It won't necessarily fix it, although I agree with you, funding is an issue. So what are some of the solutions for education?
Absolutely. What you need to do is, first off, make sure it's funded. Make sure Title I is funded. Make sure we are getting the resources needed in the schools. And then we need to give control to the experts who can come in, design the right lesson plans, design the right teaching principles, make sure that we have good small-sized classes, make sure that we have well-trained teachers, make sure that we are paying our teachers enough so we're attracting high-quality, competent teachers to come in and educate our children moving forward. It also means, though, that we need to recognize not everyone's going to go to a four-year college, and so we need to provide other avenues so people are prepared to enter the workforce. That means community colleges. That means vocational training opportunities. That means having apprenticeships and internships. It means providing those avenues for our students to learn as they go throughout their educational system to come out ready to be great employees.
Now, shifting gears for a second, talking about Congress and what's been going on, a lot in the news, and I was just talking to Congressman Knight about this, and I also want to get your take as far as the situation with gun control and the attempt by Democrats, the sit down or the sit in or whichever term you'd like to use. What's your take on that? Do you think that was a good move, and where do you stand on gun control, and what's your take on that?
You know, as we saw with the horrific events that happened in Orlando, this is a serious national security threat that we face right now. And we saw it even before that in San Bernardino, right in our backyard here. We need to be taking steps to make sure that dangerous people, suspected terrorists, are not given the opportunity to walk in and purchase weapons of war in our community. And so it's very frustrating sitting on the outside, and you see this throughout the country. I see it in the community talking to people. They can't understand why these extremists in Washington are failing to prevent suspected terrorists from purchasing firearms. You know, if you are too dangerous, if our law enforcement agencies have determined that you are too dangerous to sit on an airplane, then you're too dangerous to walk into a store and buy an AR-15 right down the street from a school.
And so your solution is more aggressive checks, more expansive lists. Where are we actually addressing the issue then?
Sure. So there's a lot that you can do here. You know, one thing we need to do is fund having research into what are the most effective gun safety measures. That's been cut off for about the last 20 years at the CDC. We need to fund that. We need to have background checks, and we need to make sure that the background checks are funded, that the people conducting them are trained and can do them efficiently and properly. We need to have waiting periods, which at the very least will prevent suicides. And we need to have a list, which exists right now, but the proposed bills out there don't exactly use the no-fly list. They have specific other procedures for the Attorney General to use that says if the United States law enforcement personnel have determined that you are a suspected terrorist, that you're a potential suspected terrorist, that you're too dangerous to fly on a plane, you are too dangerous to purchase these weapons of war in our community. And that's an issue of national security. And it's something that we all should be able to come together on to keep our community safe.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. I want to talk to you a little bit more about going back at the build-up to June, the primary, and the election, and what's happened since then. We just have to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS. Welcome back, Santa Clarita Valley. We're here with congressional candidate Bryan Caforio for the 25th Congressional District, talking about what's going on in the election, the issues that voters are discussing out there on the streets of Santa Clarita Valley. We were just talking about the gun control, but I wanted to back us up a little bit to the June primary. It was kind of an interesting situation. You found yourself at odds with a Democratic candidate and a Republican candidate. Talk to me a little bit about going forward. You're obviously you're having to bridge two groups, or at least that's the impression, that's the discussion. What was your experience there coming back? Because obviously you had an opponent, Lou Vince, who was going against you in the primary race, and you were able to beat him out for the spot to go against Steve Knight.
Yeah, I was thrilled with the results in the primary. I enjoyed the process. You know, the last 7 months of this campaign has been spent speaking with as many people as possible, Democrats and Republicans, having debates against just my Democratic opponent, but also against Steve Knight. Came to, I think, 2 of them. The other Republican came to some of them. And it's really great to get out there, answer questions from the voters, let them see where people stand, and then make up their mind. And we were thrilled, at the primary election. The votes aren't yet finalized, but it looks like I'm going to get more votes than any Democrat in the history of this district has gotten in a primary. We feel great about that. It's nice to see your message resonating with people, to go in the community and hear that they're agreeing with you. And we just want to keep pushing forward for the next 4 months, speak to as many people as possible, and move forward in November.
And, you brought something out. Traditionally, this has obviously been a more conservative, skewing Republican district. How are you looking to kind of galvanize those registration numbers and change that support, turn blue?
Yeah, it's interesting. This district in 2012, the last presidential election we had, there were something like 17,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats in this district. And today there are 3,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans. So the Democratic Party actually has an advantage out here. It's a question of bringing them to the polls, which I think is going to happen. As we saw in the primary, people were excited. And I think we're really seeing with what's happening at the national level, or the presidential level, with just some of the extreme rhetoric being advanced by Donald Trump as the head of the Republican Party, some of the extreme positions that he is advancing, that many Republicans are walking away from, and many Democrats are getting galvanized by. I think we're going to see real strong turnout across the board that makes me feel very good about our chances in November.
So you're hopeful about the down-ticket response from Hillary as well as Donald?
Yeah, I think that I, in speaking to voters, find that my message is connecting with them. And when we see the extreme positions that Donald Trump is putting forward that are not connecting with voters, and Steve Knight, who in many respects is right there with Donald Trump on those extreme positions, I think the voters are going to keep learning more and more over the course of this campaign and are going to decide that I'm a better choice to move the community forward.
Well, and now he was on here last week and definitely did not endorse the presidential candidate and said he hasn't ever. Are you endorsing Hillary, or did you back Bernie?
I haven't endorsed either candidate. I will be voting for Hillary Clinton. I think she is by far and away the better choice than Donald Trump.
Okay.
I listened to the interview last week with Congressman Knight, and I heard him say that he doesn't endorse Donald Trump, or hasn't yet, because he's never done that in a race. But it's really a question of where they are on policies. And on policies, they are just so similar. They're peas in a pod. And so you've got Donald Trump, who is talking about building a wall and deporting 11 to 12 million people. And you've got Congressman Knight, who has said before that he has no problem deporting the parents of American citizens. You've got Donald Trump, who has, of course, incited violence at his rallies. You've got Steve Knight, who threatened to beat up a constituent after taking office. You've got Donald Trump, who didn't disavow the KKK. And you got Steve Knight, who voted for the Confederate flag. And so on these issues, they're very similar. With or without an endorsement, they're right there together.
Well, sure, but going back to talking about the down ticket results, I mean, certainly the negatives are there for both candidates. So I mean, that either kind of factors in how you play it or not, right? I mean, you're not really worried about that. Then you think that the message from Hillary is going to be ultimately help you.
I feel very good about my message. I feel good about the Democratic message as a whole, but I feel good about my particular message and speaking with voters, the response we've gotten when we speak with voters. Congressman Knight said at our debate last month, or now it's 2 months ago in May, that he thinks Social Security is a bad idea. I don't. I think Social Security is a great idea. I think that this is one of the most successful programs in American history that has brought tens of millions of American seniors out of poverty and allowed them to live out their later years with dignity and respect. It currently brings 2 to 3 million children out of poverty. And so while you've got Congressman Knight saying that's a bad idea, I'm there fighting for Social Security. I'm going to strengthen and preserve Social Security and make sure that the people in this community know that I'm going to be there for them on that critical issue.
And when we were talking about traditional Democratic positions and again, this district is traditionally not lined up with a lot of those views. Where do you break with the Democratic Party and traditional, if anywhere? Can you talk about some of those and what's important to you? And I think some of those will be important to some of the voters in our area.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think you can ever say all Democrats believe one thing or all Republicans believe another. So I'm going to be generalizing here where I say where I break. But, militarily, I think too often on the Democratic side, you see this almost reflexive movement to say we need to cut the military budget. I don't think that's right. We need to do everything possible to protect our national security. We need to make sure that we are listening to the experts, listening to those who are most responsible for keeping this country safe, and providing the full funding necessary in order to protect this community and this country. And I'm going to be there making sure that we are fully funding our national security. You got other issues like TPP. This is something that President Obama is pushing forward. It's something that I oppose. I think that it is bad for jobs in our community. I think it's bad for the environment in our community. And so I'm opposing that, even though President Obama is in favor of it.
Interesting. What about high-speed rail?
High-speed rail is an interesting issue, and we talked about this off air, but as we saw just recently with the decision to start up north instead of starting down here as initially planned, it's just another example about how we were sold a bill of goods. It's not what we've gotten. What we need to do right now, and what I'm going to do right now in Congress, is focusing on getting investment in infrastructure in our community. We have people who are commuting 1 to 2 hours a day, every single day, each way, in order to get to work down below. And we need to do things to alleviate that now. We need to be widening the road. We need to be preventing the roads from shutting down when we have 2 inches of rain that causes a mudslide and shuts stuff down. We need to be making sure that we're investing in our water security here, building a water recycling facility in our community that can provide jobs while building it, jobs while operating it, and of course give us water security. That's what we need to be investing in now and not focusing on these other projects that aren't working out the way we were told.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple questions just to personal questions. How old are you, Bryan?
I am 33 years old.
And you are married?
I am married to my wonderful wife, Lisa. We've been married for just over 3 years now.
No children?
No children.
And you live in Valencia?
We live in Valencia, just a couple miles away from the studio.
And you had mentioned you had clerked for a Chief Justice in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals?
The current Chief Judge of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Okay. So what were some of the interesting cases that you got to work on during that experience?
It was a wonderful experience. So this was Judge Sidney Thomas on the Ninth Circuit. His chambers were in Billings, Montana, so I spent a year there in Billings.
Beautiful country.
It's beautiful, and I love nature. I love being outdoors. I took, 5 trips to Yellowstone and getting to see the wildlife, and Glacier National Park is the most beautiful place, that I've ever been in the United States. It's gorgeous. But what you really saw a lot of there, almost 50% of the cases that came through during my time were immigration cases or sentencing cases. And what became so clear in dealing with these cases is just how broken our system is. You've got laws going every which way. You've got judges who have interpreted them every which way. And that's a real problem. So we need to get in there. We need to have this comprehensive reform in order to provide some guidance. Go ahead.
What are 3 things we can do to kind of address the immigration problem, or one comprehensive solution, whatever you got? What's your plan?
Sure. Just to finish what I was about to say, which is in these cases, the other thing you realize, not just how broken the system is, but still how amazing America is, and how so many people still see us as that light that they want to come to, the opportunity to provide for their family, the opportunity to build a better life. And you just see how we're still viewed by so many people, and we need to do everything we can to preserve that. The immigration issue is not going to be easy to fix. We need to have comprehensive reform, though, that does the best we can, and Washington is failing right now on that. We need to secure our borders. We need to make sure we're funding that. We need to make sure we're keeping our borders safe and secure.
So a wall.
But what we really need to do.
But reality, how are we going to do this?
You fund it, you patrol it, we have pretty secure borders now, but they need to be more secure. And you need to do something with regards to the 11 to 12 million people here now who are hiding in the shadows, which is bad for our economy, which is bad for families. And there's no way, no matter what Donald Trump says, that we're going to be able to deport those people. And what we need to do is fight for families. What we need to do is come up with a path that is going to allow these families to come out of the shadows, to participate in our economy, and to follow a set of procedures that will put them on a pathway such that they can become full participants in our society.
So you're talking about streamlining the process then, because obviously there is that path, but anyone who's tried to use the system knows it takes years to get through legal citizenship. So are you looking at some way to streamline that process for people that have been here, like we've heard recommended, if you've been here for 10 years with no children, is one,
Yeah, there are a lot of different proposals for how you do it. You start with the Dreamers. You had, the president tried with DACA and DAPA. We have situations where you can serve in the military to get citizenship. There are a lot of ways that you can do it, but we need to streamline that process, provide clear rules for that process, and make sure that we are letting the people who are here now, who are otherwise contributing, otherwise following the law, want to become American citizens, provide them with a pathway that they can do that and that they can participate in our economy and stop hiding in the shadows in the interim. And they've done studies on this, and the 2013 proposed comprehensive immigration reform bill not only would have been the right thing to do morally, but it would have reduced the deficit by upwards of $900 billion. This is something we should all be able to come together on and fight for, but unfortunately, the career politicians in Washington are just causing dysfunction, continue to kick the can down the road, and they're not addressing the problems.
Awesome. Well, Bryan, thank you. I appreciate you taking some time out of your schedule to come down here and talk to us and give your insights and a little bit of your story to our listeners. It'll be up on hometownstation.com and our Facebook page. This has been Perry Smith, KHTS News Director on your hometown station, AM 1220 KHTS.